Good afternoon. Hey there everybody, this is Casey here to install the Flowmaster Outlaw axle back on a 2022 Bronco with the 2.7 liter. This is the axle back from Flowmaster Series 8120. We'll go through some different parts that came in the packages, some tools that you'll need, and then we'll hop right in and removing the stock exhaust. All right, first things first, unboxing the exhaust. I did leave the bubble wrap on the tips to help prevent any scratching or marring that may occur as we lift the exhaust up into place or move it around on the exhaust hangers. You'll effectively need just a ratchet, possibly an extension, and 3 different sockets. The socket sizes you will need are 13 millimeter, 14 millimeter, and 15 millimeter. Additionally, you may need needle nose pliers that will help assist getting 2 bolts and or nuts up into the frame. With that said, so I have this laid out driver's side on the left side and passenger side on the right side. You'll notice the passenger side only has 2 nuts. That's because you're utilizing the factory hanger bolts and just attaching it onto those. The driver's side does not have a hanger in that place. However, there are holes in the frame where we will feed through the bolts and attached using the washer, lock washer, and nuts. The red hangers are from Flowmaster, and then the hanger keepers are there to put in place both to keep the hangers on as well as to help position the exhaust and keep it in place once you get the tips where you like them. Other things that you may possibly use are penetrating spray to loosen up the hangers, the factory hangers, or the 1 nut that is on the exhaust clamp. And also you may need to use a pry bar to get the hangers off of the metal loop. All right, under the truck now. So the first thing you want to do, and I've already done this and let it soak, was spray down your different connecting points with WD-40, some type of penetrating oil. The spots that you want to hit are around the 2 factory rubber grommets, the exhaust hangers. So there's one on the passenger side right here by the exhaust tip, and then there's another one over my head here on the driver's side frame rail. You also want to hit the bolt right here where the exhaust connects to the mid pipe. So that's right there. And then if you want, you can also hit the 2 bolts for the factory hanger on the passenger side. Again, the grommets, it'll help it slide off much easier with a pry bar. I'm going to use a wrench to get it off there just because it's a tight spot. And then on the bolts, it just helps get the bolts off if they've seized up. Pretty new truck, so we shouldn't have that problem. So we'll get started. And first thing first is pull off the grommets. And I will say, I forgot to mention it, the instructions, since they give you new rubber grommets or polyurethane grommets, you can pull the grommets off any way you see best, but they'll stay with the muffler and they'll come off the truck. So there's the passenger side off. Now on the driver's side, it's a little bit tighter to squeeze, so I am using a wrench to pop it off. All right, so we got both of those off. So the exhaust is now hanging by the muffler clip that is connected from the muffler to the mid pipe. So now we will take our socket. We're going to use, this is the 15 millimeter, to take that off of there, and then we'll wiggle it loose. You don't have to loosen it all the way up. It's just enough to get pressure off of the clamp that's holding the pipe onto the muffler. Now we should be able to wiggle it loose out of that pipe. Again, this is where you might want to have somebody help you. Hopefully you don't have to wiggle it too long or too far, but you're just easing it out of that pipe. Pretty straightforward, and there it is. So here's a look at the stock exhaust versus the Flowmaster Outlaw exhaust. The factory exhaust is pretty heavy, so you will lose a little bit of weight. Not the biggest of concern on an off-road vehicle, but doesn't hurt. Okay, so working on the passenger side of the car, you'll notice that the bracket should be facing in. Flowmaster doesn't mention this, but both ones will U into the center of the car. And you'll also notice that there's only 2 holes that it'll fit on. So it'll kind of tell you which holes to use. So we have that hanging up there, and we will get our lock washers, or excuse me, our lock nuts, which are the nuts with the blue seal in them. And we will get those started. And we'll get our wrench. And this will be the 13 millimeter, and we will tighten these down. Just alternating back and forth to make sure it seats flat. Tighten those nice and good. All right. And lastly, we'll put our hanger on there. It's ready to roll. So let's move over to the driver's side, which is a little bit more of a pain, as you'll see. So you do have 2 holes there, the smaller holes. And again, the bracket should face in, should U in, and you're gonna put it in the 2 smaller holes. Those are ones that we're gonna use. So you can use these lower holes or the holes beside it to hold your bolt in place. To get it up there. So again, the holes in the bracket will tell you where it goes. So I will say there might be different ways of doing this, but we're using the supplied bolts with the washer on it. I'm putting my finger up through here so I can control the bolt and get it in the hole. So I have a bolt and a washer in there. I'm gonna do that a second time for the other one. Put the washer on the bolt. And it's not as easy since I am using my wrong hand, but we will fish it up through there. And there we go. So we have our two bolts and washers holding it in place. This does get a little tricky because you don't want to knock them out of there, obviously. So it is the 2 outer holes that we're going to use. And to do this, the way I saw the easiest was to get one on there, have the other one sitting up above, put our lock washer on, and put our bolt on, or start our bolt. So now we know that one won't fall through. We'll grab our other lock washer and our bolt. Oops. Might want to bring the bracket down to it first. So now they're on there. Lock washer and bolt. Problem becomes getting these to tighten down. But the lock washer should do its trick right there. As I mentioned, since those are factory nuts or factory bolts, you do have to switch over from your 13mm to your 14mm to tighten these down. It'll get a little tricky as far as getting the bolt to hold. Again, the lock washer should hold it in place. All right, so that's that. You can get your needle nose pliers up in there if yours don't hold down like mine are. Mine are pretty tight. You can get your needle nose pliers up in this hole, or potentially a wrench. I don't know if you can get a wrench up in there and hold that bolt from the other side. But you can see mine are tightening up pretty good. So we're good there. So both of them are locked in. And we will put this other hanger on as well. So there's that. These, I don't know what they call them, but these lock washers for the grommets, we will put those on after we get the muffler in there and get it situated, because it can help center the exhaust. You can move these grommets left to right and this will hold them in place. So we'll put those on last once we get it situated in there. All right, so next up, we're ready to fit the actual axle back exhaust in place. So I'm under the car lifting it over my head. I usually work alone, so if you also do that, it's pretty easy to get it in place. We first want to put it into the tailpipe section or the mid-pipe section. Pretty loose, so it actually works, fits in there pretty good. So no problems there. And then we will want to, I'm actually going to pull this hanger off on this on this passenger side and put it on the exhaust. It looks like it's going to be a little bit easier. You just have to work with it. I'm going to slide it all the way up onto the the axle back, and then slide it onto the factory hanger. And then on the driver's side, I'm going to do the same thing. Even though the instructions say to put it on the car, I'm going to put it on the actual muffler first. And then move it up into place and push it on to the hanger. And you want to push them far enough to where you can get those lock washers that we're going to put in at the very end. So you have room to put those on both pins so that we can straighten it out. So pretty solid. Feels pretty straight. So at this point, you do want to get, I can feel that it's even. I'm going to pull these off. You do want to get out from underneath the car and make sure that it's straight at this point, because this tightening it down will actually lock it in place. So looks pretty good. I'm going to stand back and check it. Looks pretty good there. So now we want to take our larger socket, which was our 15mm, and tighten it in place. Push up against the pipe, because that does help center it and keep it up as high as possible, which is obviously important on off-road vehicles. I probably loosened the bracket too much, but it definitely made it easy getting it into the mid-pipe. And you'll hear it cinch down on the pipe. And get that pretty tight, because that is where you would normally have exhaust leaks. and pretty solid. So again, checking the clearance, how it sits out from the bumper, adjusting a little bit. Feels and looks pretty good, so I'm going to tighten it down even more. There it goes. So lastly, hopefully you can see this. I know it's hard to see. Again, we're going to put these locks on there. So that'll help us. That helps keep it in place on the hangers. Keeps the red piece in the right spot. So press those on. Again, it goes on both of them. So you have 4 of them. So there's that. And pretty solid. So yeah, so if you have any adjustments, effectively what you'll do, again, is move your rubber hangers around. As you can see, it'll move it around. It still has a flex joint up in the front, which allows this thing to move. So, so that'll help you out there. And then also, if you still need more adjustment, loosen your mid pipe here, and then you can also get a little bit more adjustment out of it there. So that's it. We'll get in and start it up and see how it sounds.